tonight we've got a little talk on restoring vintage equipment, which follows on from Vintage Night that we had last Tuesday. It wasn't that many of us here, but we had some really good, interesting gear.
Yeah.
If you want to know the information, there's some pictures and a little bit of video on the website and on the YouTube you can have a look at. So this follows on with that, and just really some tips and tricks, hints and tips for any of you that are thinking of doing it one day, maybe not yet, or you've already had a go, or maybe you're just interested to see what's involved, some of the things to think about. So this is dead practical. It's just a brain dump almost of everything I've learnt, which could save you from untold expense, grief and wasted time, all of which are useful. So first question to ask really, if you're thinking of restoring anything that's old, and I'm not just talking about stuff like this, but old transceiver, piece of old test gear, you can pick up some bargains if you're prepared to buy old stuff. But the thing is, a lot of old stuff comes with issues and faults. You might want to fix it, you might want to restore it. There's a few things to think about, which, as I said, might save you from buying a lemon, or might save you from wasting some time. So the first question you want to ask yourself is, should I even bother restoring this thing? And that is a very valid question, because if you see something on eBay, then you've got to decide whether, I don't know what faults it's going to come with, I know what they're asking for it, what is it actually worth to me, how important is it? What I've attempted to show with that diagram there with the badly constructed squares is that there's a trade-off. I mean, how much it is, what condition it's in, versus kind of how rare, how much value it has. And I don't necessarily mean how much you can flog it for, but how much value it has to you. For example, I saw like that Eddystone 640 I restored. It was just like, I don't care, I'm going to get this, because it was the first receiver I ever had as a young spotty teenage shortwave listener, and I wanted another one. So it was something I was emotionally invested in, where if it's something else I'd be like, is this really the right thing to buy? You know, 60 quid, are they asking too much? You know, you've got to think that out. Plus, what are your resources in terms of skill level? Do you have the right test gear and tools to pull the job off, knowing what's involved? Or can you afford to buy enough Cokes for FZP to give it to him to repair for you? All valid questions. Good evening. Welcome.
I'm going to drink.
So, kind of stick your finger on that square and estimate where the item that you're thinking of comes, and decide whether it's actually worth your while and the investment of time and effort it's going to take to do it. And if the answer's no, don't go there, because you're only going to get really frustrated, you're going to hate the whole process, and it's just going to be a drag. Whereas it should really be a pleasure, and you have victory at the end. That's what you want, that's what you're aiming for. I've got a nice picture of something there. I mean, what do you think about that? Is that worth the effort? External inspection. Have a look at those kind of things. We've already mentioned most of them. The power cable is one to be aware of. Oh, look at the filth on this. I'm going to make a mess of the club here if I'm not careful. Bits of junk everywhere. Is it 2-core? Is it 3-core? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Some of them are like this cloth covered rubber insulated thing, and you can be rubbing on it and you can just see it coming apart in your hands. Obviously, if it's like that, it's really old, you're going to have to replace it. But that's the kind of thing you want to be looking at. Are all the valves in there? You know, is the tuning scale a glass? Does it have all the knobs? Does it have, what's the cabinet like? This cabinet look alright to you? This cabinet's got some issues. You haven't had a careful enough look, probably because you're too far away. These joints, see?
Oh.
Now that's fixable. That's okay, that's fixable. But if you had a great big gash in the veneer, or a big chunk of veneer missing, where it's been ripped off, then that's a different prospect. That's going to give you some trouble. You know, you're either going to have to strip that piece of veneer off and get some new veneer to match, strip it, stain it, glue it on, iron it on. Unfortunately, this top one's got the painted Bush logo on it, so you'd wreck that and you won't be able to get that. So these are little questions to think about. So we think it looks alright. we're probably going to maybe think it's a go, or we're going to have a go at it. It doesn't look too bad. All the valves are in place. Wiring looks reasonable. Where do we start with this? Safety first, I would say. Absolutely, definitely. So, start off with the mains. Power cable, condition. Is it wired properly? What kind of state is the mains switch in? Is it wired properly? Are there any obvious shorts, any wires hanging off on the main side of things? Fuses, have they been replaced with tin foil? Things like that. You'd be surprised. Some of you have probably done it. Quite a lot of sets, they have capacitors connected from the two lines of the mains to the chassis, or different combinations of it for mains filtering. Those capacitors are probably 40, 50, possibly even 60 years old. Do you really want those across the mains supply? If you find them, rip them out. Replace them with modern X and Y rated proper mains bypass capacitors. Yeah. For safety's sake, if nothing else. Power transformer, that's the next place to go. There's no good plugging it in if what's going to happen is a big wallop and a big pall of smoke. So I would get my Avo out, or whatever you've got, check all the windings on the power transformer, make sure they're all continuous, no breaks in them, and also check from each of them to the chassis to make sure there's no shorts. That way at least you've got some confidence when you put power on it, it's not going to go bang. Good idea. While you're at it, check for obvious shorts. You can check the heater string through all the valves, make sure that's continuous and that it's not shorted to chassis. Check the dial lights. This is one people miss. The dial lights quite often are up in the top of the set where it gets hottest. The wiring is in the worst condition. If there's going to be any shorts, there might be shorts on the dial light strings, so do check that out. And the HT line. Usually find that by just finding the smoothing capacitor, get the circuit diagram, have a look on there. Any HT shorts to chassis, that would be a bad idea if you were to turn it on. If you find anything like that, you can fix it then and there before you've even put power on it, and you'll be a lot safer as a result. And finally, find and replace that capacitor. There's one capacitor in these sets. It's so notorious, it's called that capacitor. It's responsible for more disasters than any other single component in the whole thing. And I'll show you why. Here's a circuit diagram of a bog standard old domestic radio. You will notice up here, this is the audio output stage. Here's the speaker. There's the audio output transformer. The secondary connects to the speaker. The primary is in the anode circuit of the output valve. Right? There's high voltage here. This is the next valve in the line. There's the anode of it. There's high voltage here. And there's a capacitor between that anode and the grid of this valve. What would happen if that capacitor began to leak DC? You would get probably quite a large positive voltage building up on the grid of that valve. What's going to happen then is that valve is going to conduct very hard. The anodes are going to begin to glow red, then bright red, and even brighter red. All that excessive current is going to be flowing through this transformer, which remember is made of unobtainium. It's probably going to burn out the primary in that transformer. Oh dear, that's very bad. If it doesn't burn out the primary in that transformer, let's go a little further down and see what we have here. Oh heck, the HT choke, the mains transformer, all the things in the set that are on unobtainium can all be destroyed by that one capacitor going leaky. So find that capacitor and replace it. But you definitely do want a lamp load and a variac. Variac, you know what that is. You can bring up the mains from 0 up to 240 very slowly with a knob. Lamp load, you want one of these. Very easy to build. In fact, if you're ever thinking about restoring any vintage stuff, or you just want a little project for a rainy day, go make one. You can just use standard electrical components and wire it up. And all it is basically is 1 or 2 old filament lamps in series with the mains supply. Idea being, you plug that into your mains, you plug your radio or your set or whatever in there. When you turn it on with the lamps in circuit, if there's anything very badly wrong with that, it's the lamps that will dissipate all the power. You'll see the lamps glowing brightly, and that will tell you this is bad. But the set won't catch fire. Large amounts of smoke won't come out because the lamps are acting as a ballast. Once you're happy with it, you can flip your switches to bypass, take the lamps out and put full mains on. But really good piece of test gear. The reason I've got two is I've got two 40 watt bulbs there, so I can have 40 or 80 in circuit depending on the current capacity of whatever it is I'm working on. So good piece of kit that. Get the service manual for the set. You can get them if you go online and just look up the make and model of the set. I almost guarantee that you'll find there's a radio museum, there's several other websites, and you can download them for free. In the worst case, if you actually have to pay for one, it'll only be £3 or £4. And if you want to restore this thing anyway, it'll be the best £3 or £4 you ever spent, because it'll give you all the alignment instructions, it'll give you information about the history of the set, where it was made, it will give you the circuit diagram, it'll give you like a drawing showing you where all the different parts physically are. It's going to save you hours. Switch cleaner, you're going to have to spray everything. All the pots will be as scratchy as heck when you try and use it. The variable capacitor will be full of dust, but also the pivots will be all scratchy, and that's what makes a connection as well. You've got an electrical connection at all the pivot points, so give that a spray, give it a work, give it a clean. Push buttons, they're terrible for it. You need to clean all the switches behind them. Headphone sockets, things like that. Valve sockets, you'll quite often find that it's crackling randomly and you don't know why. You put your finger on a valve and move it about, it'll crackle. So you want to spray all the valve sockets and then put the valve in and out a few times. It'll solve all that. So you definitely want some switch cleaner. Waxy caps, we talked about those. Anything that says Hunts on it, just get rid of it. Any of those wax paper ones, just get rid of them. Just swap them. You can get capacitors on eBay really cheap, high voltage ones. You do a couple of sets, you'll have a big box of extra ones that you can use, and it's well worth it. Resistor values, while you're going around changing caps, just check the resistors in each area. You'll find out these old ones, they slowly drift high in value. As we said with valve equipment, it really doesn't matter. It can be 25% higher than it should be and it'll still work. Won't work quite as well though. So if you really want to get this thing back to the way it was, you might want to check them. And anything that's a bit out of tolerance, just swap it. You find it especially with the ones that are carrying more current, because they get hotter during the normal working life of the set, and that makes the values drift quicker. So you may want to replace some with like 1 watt ones or something, you know, just to help it along. Especially with communications receivers, things may be hiding in cans and components. Like in these cans, there's just going to be a coil, they're just little ones, they're IF transformers. But on the Eddystone 640, for example, the entire BFO is hidden inside a can, and there's about 8 components in it. So again, that's where the service manual will help you, because it'll tell you about things like that. When you're fault finding, do simple checks first and work up to the more complex stuff. I mean, unless it's a really valuable set, the worst you can do is knacker it up. And if it's an old one that's unloved and it's got no future anyway, you're at least attempting to give it a future. If you do it wrong, well, you know, at least you've learned something.
White spirit is the answer for the hardened grease.
What?
White spirit is
White
the answer
spirit.
for the hardened grease.
Yeah, IPA sometimes gets it off. As I said, the other good thing that solves a multitude of things is acetone. You go to Superdrug, find yourself some lady's nail polish remover, but don't get the non-acetone containing stuff. Get the one that says like 99% acetone or something. It'll only cost you £1 for quite a big bottle of it. That stuff melts all sorts of things. It's a good flux remover as well. It gets flux off circuit boards like nothing else. Brilliant. Stinks though, it's horrible. So, that's pretty much it for the talk. Any questions?